Hi. I was inspired to record this episode by a study recently published by PARP, which shows that 77% of companies in Poland have not yet implemented AI. A similar study from PwC concerns the global market, where it turns out that 80% of companies, even if they've started doing something with AI, well, they're stuck at the pilot stage. I assume that since you're interested in this video, you're probably an example of such a company. Perhaps, however, you already have AI implemented in quotes, because some treat buying a GPT license or Microsoft Copilot as implementing AI in the company. Practice shows, however, that this is far from the truth, because if it's just a license thrown at employees with the slogan, "Use AI," then you don't have AI implemented in the company, you just have an invoice for AI. Regardless of whether you haven't officially started doing anything with AI or you already have some licenses in your company, either way, people are definitely using it. With your knowledge, without your knowledge, 80% of employees in some form or another are already using such tools. In sales, they're probably writing offers using Chat GPT, marketing generates social media posts, customer service creates responses to complaints, and the assistant takes meeting notes. Everyone in their own way, everyone according to their own whims of processes, creates their own prompts, but that's not implementing AI in a company. In the next few minutes, I'll tell you where to start to actually successfully implement AI in your company. First point, most companies do it by feel. Before you start doing anything, you must have organized processes. You must know what your starting point and baseline are. If you only have chaos, you'll automate and accelerate chaos. You won't even know if you're doing something better or worse. Something will be faster, something will be with AI. Imagine you have 10 chefs. Each of them cooks in the same restaurant, but according to their own recipe. Every customer gets the same thing, yet at the same time, something completely different. Besides, even if one of those chefs does something truly great, the rest don't know about it. And when the best one leaves, his knowledge leaves with him. In fact, we have 3 basic risks that result from this. First, data leaks. Information about your company, offers, analyses are somewhere on accounts unknown to you, completely out of control. Second, external inconsistency. Your salespeople might respond in different ways, give different arguments, in extreme cases, even different prices to different customers. Third, loss of knowledge, as I've already mentioned. If 1 or 2 of your salespeople have a really great prompt, they generate something very well, and one of them leaves, his prompt, his knowledge disappears along with him. If everyone in your company uses AI differently, then you don't have an AI strategy. You only have random experiments that no one controls. Secondly, you must have a person who is actually responsible for the implementation of AI in the company. It can't be just any random person, it must be someone from the C-level. They must have a real impact on the company. MIT research from last year shows that 95% of projects that were piloted in companies, simply do not move to the production phase. Only 5% succeed. One of the most common reasons cited is precisely the lack of a decision maker responsible for delivering and enabling their development. Think of it as building a house. You can have a great architect, great professionals, great suppliers, but if you don't have a site manager, then each of these people or teams does their own thing. In the end, you only get 5 random fragments. There must be someone who actually comes, checks what's happening, coordinates, makes decisions on the fly. Only then can the whole initiative succeed. As I said, the person responsible for implementing AI in the company must have 2 traits. First, they must be a decision maker. 80% of implementation is processes, procedures, organization. 20% is actually technical work, and that's why a person like an operations director must have someone by their side who will be able to implement it, whether it's inside the company or an external partner. In a 50 to 100 person company, it will very often be the CEO or a deputy. In a larger company, it could already be the operations director. But it shouldn't be a newly created Chief AI Officer position without real influence and decision-making power. McKinsey research from last year shows that in companies that achieve the greatest success in implementing AI, there is 3 times a higher percentage of C-level executives who actually coordinate and get involved in the implementation. That's 48% compared to 16% in companies that are not successful. Without a name, in the role of AI owner, it's not an initiative, just a wish. If you want your first implementation to actually deliver results, you have to act a bit counterintuitively. You should choose less, not more. I know it's not natural, but it's not worth jumping into the deep end right away. It's a bit like learning to swim. If you want to learn to swim, you start with something small first. On one hand, it's not worth watching hundreds of tutorials. On the other hand, you don't jump into the pool right away and swim an Olympic distance. You have to choose, go to the pool, pick a specific activity, and start learning. Then the next, subsequent stages, styles, and so on. It's similar with automation. If you start with a 6-month audit of the whole company, you'll lose momentum. And there just won't be that drive to keep going with the automations. You should choose one single process that meets 3 specific criteria. It happens at least 10 times a week. Without that, a return on investment will be hard. Second, it must be measurable in time. How many people spend how many hours a week doing which activity? You need to know the current state to compare it with the post-automation results. Third, it must be reversible. You don't want to risk losing a client due to an automation error right at the start. If the bot is just drafting an email, that's fine. But if it's automatically sending offers to clients, I'd advise against it. An example idea, one of the more classic and simpler ones, is inbox automation, adding inquiries to the CRM and enriching company data. A very common example, I even described it in a recent video. Imagine a situation where you have 5 salespeople, 10 inquiries a day, and on average it takes 15 to 20 minutes per inquiry. Email classification, adding to CRM, and company-based research. And those are very conservative estimates. After implementing automation, an email is classified in 30 seconds, a minute, or 2. Then there's the auto CRM entry and enrichment. Salespeople don't spend time on this, they get ready to use information. On a monthly scale, you free up nearly 1/3 of a full-time position. That's $3,500 to $4,000 in direct labor costs. In that time, people can serve more clients or focus more closely on current ones, so beyond the savings, you have additional benefits. Other common and fairly simple to implement automations include transcription automation. For all companies with many meetings and recordings, especially online, you can automate transcriptions, notes, and subsequent action points. And from there, move higher with further automations, as this is a great starting point. An automatic generator for offers and sales proposals from a brief. This can be combined with the previous point. If you have the guidelines and know what the client needs, you can automate the offer preparation in the company style, tailored to the client. Something that usually takes a salesperson 30 minutes, an hour, or 2. Here, a large part can be automated, leaving the human with only the final check and any corrections. And if you don't feel up to conducting such a mini audit and identifying basic processes yourself, we at JAAQOB are happy to help. Remember, the first decision in AI isn't which software to buy, but which problem to eliminate. If you want your team to believe that automations work, you should start with something really small. It's about showing a real result, impact, better quality, faster operations to encourage more automation. Think of it like a workout at the gym. No one sensible goes in and immediately deadlifts their own body weight. Best to start with an intro, a 6-week training cycle, getting all the muscles moving. Then, once you see the results in the mirror, you automatically want to keep training. It's the same with automation in a company. If you see that it brings effects and results, well, then you genuinely and truly wonder what more can be done. 6 weeks is a realistic time frame to identify, plan, implement, and test a relatively simple automation. With an external company, the cost of such an implementation can start from $5,000 to $8,000. On top of that, you should expect about $150 in monthly subscriptions. Fortunately, most of these basic ones will be usable for future automations without a geometric increase in costs. This way, in about 6 weeks, you free up around 70 hours of your employees' work. You save $900, $1,000. The cost pays for itself within 6 to 9 months. Of course, you can build it internally if you just have someone technically competent. Whether it's one solution or the other, it doesn't change the fact that someone from the C-level, the CEO, must be responsible. The COO, someone who has real value. I know I've said this before, but it's really very important. Count how many repetitive manual processes you have in your company based on email, Excel, moving data from tool to tool. Go to your 3 best employees and find out what they waste the most time on in a repetitive way every day. That will be your starting list for the first evening of planning. The rest, like who owns the AI, which processes to automate, it will all fall into place once you know where to start. Keep in mind that your competitor is already counting these processes. The question is, are they doing it before you or after you? I hope I've helped you sort out the basics in your head a bit. If you have any questions, feel free to write. In the meantime, thanks for your attention. See you later.